Hi everybody, I don't want to, I'd love to just dive right into this. Some of you know me, some of you don't, so I'd like to introduce myself and thank Jared for giving me this wonderful opportunity to make this presentation to you all. My name is Robert. I'm part of...
Just a little slower for Suzanne.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm a little nervous, sorry.
That's fine, Robert.
Okay, my name is Robert. I'm one of Jared's PhD students, external. I am based in Madrid, Spain, through a company called TechnoSite. And my PhD is on the topic of cost-benefit analysis for something called e-accessibility. Since I'm not exactly sure everybody's backgrounds, I would like to have a show of hands. How many of you guys know about the topic of e-accessibility or web accessibility or anything IT related? Okay, so don't worry, I'm with you guys, it's all good. I just need to press this one. Boom. Okay, so let's look at this. Sorry Linda and Donal can't see the presentation. Can you see me at all, Linda? No. Okay, let me move this over a little bit more. Hi. Okay, so if I can just move, I don't know how to move your screen over. Linda's covering a cell, but it doesn't matter. It's okay. My project and my thesis are pretty much asking the question, can accessible ICT, ICT stands for Information Communication Technology, can this expand markets and also create value? When I say expand markets, I mean markets for people with disabilities. And in this diagram you can see a person with a visual impairment with his dog, and he's being surrounded by all of this technology, and then seems like he has a question, and then he goes into his backpack with the telephone that's ringing, and it seems like the telephone is aiding him to be able to find his way around and also to communicate better, because this telephone has been adapted for a person with a disability. And you can see other ICT, or information communication technology. You can see computers, you see some kind of sign, display sign, and you see the dog wanting some meat. And it's a really cute design, a cute little demonstration showing how ICT can help people with disabilities. Okay, so I've spoken a little bit about ICT. Let's get into e-accessibility and web accessibility. Now, as you can see from here, this is e-accessibility, and web accessibility forms a part of it. Now, when it comes to web accessibility, it normally means only websites. So, making sure that the websites are readable and the information on the website is attainable to everybody regardless of the ability type. Whether the person is using an assistive technology such as a screen reader or high contrast features on a website, making sure that the website is equally accessible to someone with an impairment as to somebody without an impairment. And this falls under the general scope of e-accessibility, which is, the E stands for electronics. So we have some other factors in here. So if I'm just going to go over to the flip chart, I'm just going to talk about the main three subjects I will go into in my PhD, my main three technological aspects. I'm going to talk about websites, I'm going to talk about mobile phone apps, and I'm also going to talk about SSTs. SSTs stands for Self-Service Terminal. Don't worry, self-service terminal pretty much is any kind of terminal that you go to and perform a function using electronic manners, such as an ATM machine, a ticket kiosk, an information guide at an airport, or along those lines. Now, everybody defines self-service terminals differently. There are different terminologies for it. I'd like to focus on ATM machines, but I'll get more into that later. Now, good thing I got my backup here. Just to start off, people with disabilities are still not fully enjoying benefits and opportunities provided by ICTs. Accessible ICTs are essential enablers for participating in the economic aspects of life and society as well, to exercise the freedom of choice and to have an independent living. Now, these are all aspects listed under the UNCRPD, which fall under the scope of e-accessibility. MEAC, which is a study, well, it's hidden by the sky call. MEAC, M-E-A-C, is a study, let me write this down for you. Measuring e-accessibility is a study that does exactly that. It's a snapshot of the accessibility situation going on in Europe right as this moment, and it shows that e-accessibility levels in Europe is still low. Now, one pinpoint of this is that accessibility is not a niche market. What it needs to be understood is that ensuring accessibility is not only ensuring that people with disabilities can use the internet. What it also talks about, what it also achieves, is that the technology is usable for everybody. It's more about usability than just disability. Because whether you can use it now or use it later, whether you experience a disability short term or a long LLHP, a lifelong health problem, regardless, it encapsulates the main issues of usability, and it's important for every business opportunity, and that is what I would like to go further in my PhD studies. Now, we do have internet access, but since the computer is kind of tied up right now, I'd like to skip this because I was going to take you to a website called accessforall.eu. Everybody can write that down, and you can see on the front page it shows examples of people with disabilities using technology at the same level as people without disabilities. It talks about ATM machines, it talks about websites, mobile phones, a lot of different things. Alright. Before I go into this, let me just go over the scope of what I'd like to talk about in my PhD studies. Now, there's these three elements. We'll just ignore that for now. There are these three technologies.
Drag it up on the... It's not dragging.
I don't know how to do that, so I'll just wing it. It won't move. Okay, that's okay. Hi, Donal. No, that's fine, Donal. It's okay. It's all good. Don't worry. As you can tell by the title of this seminar, it's cost-benefit analysis, but also a legislation review. Now, I'm going to be doing eventually, well, I've started now, I have about 26 pages, but I'm still nowhere near ending it, an entire legislation review of in different scales. I have legislation coming from the UNCRPD, the European Union, member state level, which is, I'm choosing 2 member states in general. I live in Spain, and Spain has a lot of accessibility legislation, so I'm choosing Spain, and also Ireland as well. and also outside of EU, such as US and Canada. Maybe regional. I haven't seen regional legislation as of far. So my legislation review is going to prove how the UNCRPD legislates websites accessibilities, apps accessibilities, and self-service terminal accessibility. Same thing goes along with the EU, member states, US and Canada, if I have time, and that's my main goal for that. Now, my main goal for the first part of the title of this seminar, which is cost-benefit analysis, is to do something called a cost-benefit analysis and building the business case. Building the business case pretty much in layman's terms. It is coming up to a company and saying that, okay, here's an idea, and this is why this idea would work for you, and it will save you money, it will increase your market, it will increase the people you can sell to, and you'll not be excluding people from your market strategy. And that's one of the main purposes of my project and the DREAM program. So, if I can go further, if I could go back into web accessibility, all companies are considered to be important for web accessibility. More than 50% of websites in Europe were designed to be accessible from the start, however, not necessarily are. Reasons for launching an accessible website may include compliance with legal requirements, such as my legislation review, support of the company's corporate social responsibility policy, widening the number and characteristics of users, and also usability, which is a point that I was speaking about earlier. Most websites were developed either by an external consultancy company or in a partnership within the organization and also outside, hiring somebody from the outside. All of these numbers come from this MEAC study. So if you want to Google MEAC, you'll see all the full reports over there. Web accessibility is linked with the operational performance of the website, usability enhancement, faster loading time, search engine optimization, etc. Does everybody know what search engine optimization is? You know when you Google something and you want to find the most relevant thing for it? Like if I were to Google Egypt and the first thing I get is not the country, that's because of something called search engine optimization not being used to its full extent. So companies right now are very interested in search engine optimization. It's a big buzzword for most companies with websites. They want their websites at the top of the Google ranking. So using methods that improve search engine optimization, which I can leave for another lecture, is going to make their websites much more prominent in Google's hits, and also other benefits as well. It's not just that, but also along the lines of usability and accessibility. Making a website accessible highlights or enhances, search engine optimization. Next point, the improvement in social image is considered critical, especially as a part of a wider CSR strategy. Next point, the 2 ticks accreditation in the UK, indicating that an employer is committed to supporting or employing people with disabilities, and also better profile in media publications and reports, avoiding less legal costs and fines arising from litigation, and also decrease in user complaints. These are all reasons why companies would like to use accessible websites and accessible strategies in their marketing campaigns. However, not everybody knows about this. These are just some more numbers from the MEAC study. I'll just keep going. These are some results about usability, accessibility, and web design are usually done at the same time. It's difficult to meet accessibility guidelines using technology. Respondents to a survey done by the MEAC study think that the additional cost for developing an accessible website was 2 to 5% the total cost. And they believe that there's an extra effort required to monitor the accessibility. I'm just going to skip that. And whenever a company has a less accessible website, they often don't see people with disabilities as a target group. So they don't often realize the potential that they can unlock and gain markets by addressing them, only simply by making a website accessible, or an app accessible, or a self-service terminal accessible. They often think, and it's false, that accessibility is hard to implement and that it's also expensive. And like I said before, there's a lack of knowledge among web developers, lack of social corporate responsibility, lack of specific legislation, lack of, it goes on. I remember when I worked at the United Nations before, and I was a webmaster for 3 websites, we had a lot of projects that needed to be read by people that were in the field. When I say the field, I mean developing countries, especially with the host nation in a project. Now, a lot of the PDFs, the Word documents, they were simply not accessible, the links on the website. Now, the website itself was, however, it wasn't really fully all the way there. So when it comes to making an accessible website, there's an entire study behind it. Once you're trained in it, it's quite simple to keep it maintained as a webmaster. But getting that knowledge, not everybody knows how or is aware of the need for it. So that's another aspect to keep into consideration that I forgot to mention earlier. Now, key aspects that are quantified on the macroeconomic level include, for the user level benefits, they include a potential increase in employment for people with disabilities, potential increase in wages for people with disabilities, increased consumer welfare from access to e-commerce and e-banking, increased convenience and savings from access to e-government services. I think I was speaking to Jared earlier about how the Norwegian government made their tax revenue website accessible, and they gained an extra less than 10, more than 5% in revenue simply by making their website accessible. And it's pretty amazing, those figures. The organization can benefit by the public sector efficiency gains from more users of e-government services. Private sector also increased sales from e-commerce. But the main cost seen on the organizational level was attributable to implementing and maintaining web accessibility. So this simple aspect, which is making sure that the person running the website is making sure that the website is accessible, making sure that everything that is uploaded is accessible, making sure that the videos are subtitled, making sure that the PDFs are accessible, making sure that the Word documents can be read by a screen reader, can be used in high color contrast settings. Oh, just a little bit of training here and so many benefits on the other side. This is building the business case, and this is essentially what I'll be doing on my own. These are all from the MEAC study. Now, what I'd like to do in summation of the cost-benefit analysis is to say that through the DREAM program, I'm going to be at an organization in Ireland called Kanchi. Let me just write it down for you. And they... If you want to look them up, it's kanchi.org. K-A-N-C-H-I, for those who can't, or who are not involved. Who aren't able to see here for reasons. Kanchi is an organization that is it's not a charity, it's a private organization that specifically talks about cost-benefit analysis, that specifically talks about people with disabilities in employment, and they do lots of studies on it, and they're based in Dublin. And I think it's a really great organization, and I'll be there for 3 months doing research there with them. And after that, I will be running my own surveys, my own questionnaires, my own interviews to get more information for my PhD thesis. Now, part 2, legislation review. I'm pretty sure I've gone over this before in the beginning. I'm looking at UNCRPD, member states, if I can just flip it back over. UNCRPD, European Union, member states outside of the EU, and all of their legislation, and number 1, identifying barriers to accessible technology, and number 2, seeing how the market can push, or seeing how a government or a legislation can push companies to make a decision to choose to implement accessible policies. Now, under UNCRPD, it's not necessary to understand this. I'm just going to briefly go over it. Article 3F, accessibility is identified as one of its 8 principles, and accessibility rights, including ICT, are established as a condition for persons with disabilities to exercise their fundamental freedoms and human rights. This is a very interesting part from a study that I was looking up. The importance of accessibility is underscored by the fact that the word access in the UNCRPD has been used 9 times, and accessibility was mentioned 17 times throughout the treaty. So obviously this is an important issue. It's by Nara Siman and Axel Lebois in 2012. And Article 9 of the UNCRPD deals with the right of access to education, employment, information, transportation, social cultural life, and entertainment. This Article 9 is where did I click it now? Article 9 is where my main focus is out of all the articles of the UNCRPD. ICTs are affected in almost all of these aspects because it is overarching, and it proves to be a wide-reaching goal on behalf of the United Nations. Ireland. Here we are in Ireland. According to the NDA, the National Disability Authority, Irish public policy includes requirements for the government department websites to conform to priority levels 1 and 2 of the World Wide Web Consortium WCAG 1.0. Whoa! I'm sure that went over everyone's head. Let me just tell you what that means. In order to make a website accessible, it needs to follow guidelines. Now, it could be given a score of A, B, C, or D. But not really A, B, C, D, or E. They're given different levels of A's, sort of like a Zagat guide for a restaurant, or TripAdvisor for a hotel. Mary McAlee, I'm not pronouncing this right, the former minister in Ireland, Mary McAleese, officially launched the Excellence Through Accessibility Awards program, which is a good check for Ireland. Also, the Disability Act of 2005 also requires access to information and provides for a complaint filling process. So that's really interesting what Ireland has done. It's not just enforcing accessibility, but also the people can police themselves. So I think that's a really interesting aspect as well. Because it's not just creating legislation, it's also enforcing it. Now, who enforces it? And in this aspect, the people have a chance to enforce it. The Department of the Mary taught me how to pronounce this word, and I don't remember I'm going to try it on my own. Taoiseach? Of the Taoiseach. It's a paper called New Connections, a strategy to realize the potential of the information society. And it's stated in quote that all public websites are required to be level 2 compliant by the end of 2001. Well, that's
fiction.
Yeah. But at least it was stated. Now, whether that's, well, that's not the case. But at least people are making legislation on it. Like I said before, it's all about the enforcement of it and whether there's going to be fines involved, whether there's going to be any kind of punishment involved. There's a legal term for that, and it's lost my mind right now. So I'm going to keep going. Spain. Yay, viva España. Spain's got a lot of laws as well. The two main ones are Leondau and Lismi. I didn't put Lismi here because it's from the 80s, but it's still relevant even until today. It'll be in my report. They're both important laws. Leondau stands for equality of opportunities, non-discrimination, and universal accessibility for people with disabilities. It was created in 2003, so it's not super recent, but I'm sure on a case-by-case level it has been upheld and renewed and expanded. So, Royal Decree of 209 of 2003, it regards registries and telematic notifications. Law 59 from 2003 regarding electronic signatures. Law 34, Information Society and Electronic Commerce Services Act. And Law 51 of 2003, which is Leondau. Now, as I conclude this, I know I kind of breezed through everything very quickly in a rushed manner. I went forwards, I went backwards, I'm sorry about that. And I went a little too quickly for our typist, so. So before I come up with my closing remarks, are there any questions?